wonder if I can start with quite a broad question. Do you accept, as those we interviewed in Gerard's report have pointed out, that there have been, once again, mixed messages, but this time around July the 19th? I mean, is it a return to normality or not?
It's about getting the balance right. So we've been clear, we delayed for 4 weeks the step 4, which has enabled us to strengthen that vaccine wall. An additional 7 million vaccines have been delivered in that time. But there's no perfect time to start reopening, and that's what the Prime Minister, the Chief Medical Officer, Chief Scientific Advisor were clear on yesterday. So what we're doing is we're reopening with the summer holidays, with the summer weather. That is seen as the best time to do so. We are going to have to live with the virus and return to normal, but at the same time be cautious, and that's the balance that the Prime Minister was striking yesterday.
But according to the government's own scientists, the consequence of opening up on July the 19th is, and estimates vary, but perhaps as high as 200 deaths a day. I mean, is that an acceptable price for reopening?
Well, what they also said is there is no perfect time, and actually reopening when the schools are back in September, reopening when the colder weather is also bringing other challenges, also brings its risks. So there's no perfect time to do this. What we've done is deploy the vaccine, an extra 7 million. Opening when the schools are going to be shut is seen as the optimum time to do so. But it's about getting that balance right, so people reaching their own judgments, being sensible, following the guidance. But we also need to get back to normal. Businesses need to fire up. We need to get the economy going, and those are important as well, because there are consequences to not doing that, both economically and in terms of people's health.
Of course there are. Of course there are. But again, to return to the original question, in terms of mixed messaging, we have been told a variety of things that now seem rather shaky. For example, the idea that this pathway out of lockdown is irreversible. And Boris Johnson said back in Downing Street at tail end of February, we will not go back. We are now travelling on a one-way road to freedom. I mean, that's wrong, isn't it? That's just simply not correct. We could see restrictions being reapplied later on in the year.
Well, I think the message has been very clear throughout, which is the vaccine is the key. People need to get their jabs. People have responded.
But it's not reversible, is it? Let's just clear this up. Is it reversible or not?
Well, we have taken the cautious. So the Prime Minister addressed this at the press conference yesterday. We've been cautious in order to seek for it to be irreversible. But one never knows. What
he did back in February when he said we will not go back. We are now travelling on a one-way road to freedom.
Well, the vaccine has provided that wall. An extra 7 million vaccines have been delivered as a result of the extra 4 weeks, and that's why we've taken that extra time. But we need to learn to live with the virus. We need to get those businesses open. Some businesses have been closed for 16 months, so it's right we get the economy moving in that way and learn to live with the virus. But the key throughout, and our message has been consistent, that the vaccine is key. Your viewers have responded to that. That's why so many people...
It is perhaps the one thing the government has been consistent on, that the vaccine is key to all of this. Let's talk about vaccine passports. Again, Nadeem Zahawi back in February. We're not planning to have a passport in the UK. Michael Gove on this programme. Will I need one to go to large sporting events? No. Passports, that's not being planned. And yesterday, we again hear from the Prime Minister backtracking that these businesses, perhaps which will have large crowds within them, should be using them as a matter of social responsibility.
Well, I mean, if you're saying, is this unprecedented? Is this complex? Is this challenging? Has the government, have our scientists been learning about the virus as we went through? We saw that before Christmas. When the Kent variant came along, we had to change our plans. Of course, we've followed the data, and we've changed our plans if the data has required that. We've followed the science throughout, but it's been complex, it's been unprecedented. I think your viewers appreciate that, but they also recognise that the vaccine is the way through this. We have deployed that. 2/3 of the adult population now having their 2 jabs. So the vaccine is the way forward, but we also need to live with this condition and get the economy moving again.
Sure. I will note, however, in the space of about a week and a half, the emphasis being placed on all of this by the government has changed entirely. From, ministers referring to it as Freedom Day on this programme, it's now softly, be as cautious as we can. I mean, just in terms of masks, we had Robert Jenrick on the 4th of July saying that people need to take personal responsibility. You had, your boss at the Treasury saying that he was going to stop wearing them as soon as the requirement was dropped. Now we're being told that wearing masks is to be encouraged in some settings. I mean, where is the consistency?
I think people are grown up. They understand that many people are frustrated with wearing masks. It's not a particularly pleasant experience if, for example, you're on a long train journey and if the carriage is empty, then people quite rightly then say, well, is it necessary? And that's what step 4 and the vaccine enables us to get rid of. But at the same time, if you're on a very busy commuter tube, for example, if you're with people you don't frequently meet, what the guidance is saying is then it's prudent to wear a mask. But what we've changed is the legal requirement. So we're saying it's no longer the law to do so, but let's trust your viewers to reach their judgment. When it's crowded, when it's busy, of course wear a mask.
But 2 days,
people
2 days
can
after,
reach a judgment on that.
2 days after, July the 19th, there will be a session of Prime Minister's questions in which social distancing requirements in the chamber will be removed. You will be cheek by jowl with your colleagues. There is no mandatory requirement for people to wear face masks in the chamber, and one must suspect, given what we've heard from colleagues within your party, that some people will not be wearing them. I mean, 2 days after the country is told, let's stagger returning to work, let's wear masks when you're in crowded places, we're going to see politicians doing the entire opposite.
Again, I think it's right that Parliament, the National Parliament, comes back together. We get that working as it should. It enables the government to scrutinise effectively. It's for the Speaker, not for members of the government to decide what the rules are that apply in the chamber. But what the guidance has said, and what the Chief Medical Officer was very clear in the press conference yesterday, is that people will form their judgments in terms of when it's crowded as to what is appropriate. And I think your viewers will get that. We're trusting British people rather than making it a legal requirement. To date, it's been a legal requirement.
Did you not see what happened at Wembley Way at the weekend? There was no social distancing. No one was wearing any masks. Those are the people that you're asking to show some personal responsibility. Those are the people you're asking to show some common sense. If we've got England fans sticking flares up their backside, it does seem a bit of a stretch to say that they're going to be taking personal responsibility for wearing masks.
I think when we're showing exceptional cases like that individual, I don't think is where the British public are in terms of their guidance.
Tens of thousands of people in Wembley Way not wearing masks.
Well, I think there were some people, hugely regrettably, and the Wembley authorities are reviewing those who broke into the stadium. But again, I think we're talking about a very small number of people in a particular circumstance. That is not the norm of the British people. And the British people, I think, will understand the distinction between the legal requirement to wear masks, which has been the position up to this point. And as we learn to live with this virus, as we move to step 4, as we benefit from the British public responding in the way they have to taking up the vaccine, that allows us to free up the legal requirement and have guidance, and people will form their judgment. If they're meeting people who are not from their usual family group, their friendship group, if they're meeting people in a very crowded place, they will have the option then to wear a mask, and that is what the guidance will recommend.
But as the racism directed at the players, on the pitch inside Wembley demonstrates, the actions of a small minority can have a huge impact. I just want to focus a little bit on the racism that the footballers have experienced. Tyrone Mings wrote this on Twitter last night. You don't get to stoke the fire at the beginning of the tournament by labelling our anti-racism messages gesture politics and then pretend to be disgusted when the very thing we're campaigning against happens. That's an England footballer, a black England footballer, laying some of the blame for the racism that he and his colleagues experienced at the door of your party, at the door of your Home Secretary.
Well, I completely condemn the racism that those footballers have suffered. I think the country at large does and has been shocked by it, and that's why the government is taking action through the Online Harms Bill. The Culture Secretary, as you know, has been meeting with senior black footballers, working with them to ensure that the companies that provide the platforms for this racist abuse are tackled. We're bringing legislation forward to do that.
What action has been taken against Natalie Elphicke, your colleague within the party, who sent a message to the Conservatives WhatsApp group, they lost? Would it be ungenerous to suggest Rashford should have spent more time perfecting his game and less time playing politics? I mean, what does it say about the state of your party that she felt comfortable sending that message to our colleagues?
Well, that message was wrong, and Natalie has apologised for it. But we're taking action to tackle this through the Online Harms Bill, and that is what needs to happen. We need to ensure that those platforms take action, and if they don't, the government will take action against them.
I have often quoted the Prime Minister to government ministers on occasions such as this. His comments about pickaninnies with watermelon smiles, the problem with Africa is that we're not in charge anymore. His comments about Muslim women looking like letterboxes. And the response is always that they need to be viewed in context. But isn't the context that those remarks now need to be seen in is the the dog's abuse that has been thrown against black English footballers simply because they missed a penalty kick. Isn't that the context in which we need to view those remarks now?
No, we need to condemn those remarks against the footballers. The racism that they've suffered is completely unacceptable. That is why we are taking action in terms of the online harm bill, and that is why the platforms that provide the opportunity for people to make those remarks themselves need to take urgent action. We've been very clear on that. The Culture Secretary has been working with the FA, with leading footballers to ensure action is taken. It's completely unacceptable, and we are acting on it.
Well, why on earth would the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary choose not to condemn fans who were booing players who took the knee? A gesture that they have made perfectly clear from the start of the tournament. It's not about Black Lives Matter, but it was about them making a stand against racism. Racism that we've just seen clearly demonstrated in the past 48 hours.
Well, the Home Secretary has repeatedly taken a stand against racism. She herself has been subject
gesture politics is what she called it.
With respect, the Home Secretary herself has been the subject of appalling online racist abuse. She herself has been on the receiving end of this. She has consistently condemned racist abuse online, and she is taking action as Home Secretary against some of the extreme right-wing groups that are responsible for this. So she is using her office to take action to clamp down on it, but she herself has suffered from it, she understands it, and she is acting on it.